everybody. I'm Monsalit.
I'm Dan.
And as you know, we are continuing this series of coaching starts before the session. And as I always say, Dan and I love to talk about things outside the session, not just in the session. Today, we're talking about Core Competency 4, Cultivates Trust and Safety. Now, if you're a coach, you know exactly what this means regarding coaching and regarding a session. It's a big one for us as coaches. But we want to talk today about trust and safety in your own personal life. Are you cultivating trust and safety with yourself? And when I think about this, Dan, I think about that inner critic that you've talked about. Um, how about self doubt? When self doubt comes, what about trusting your instincts? Trusting the things you say to yourself. Are they safe? Are you creating a safe space for yourself? What's coming up for you as you think about this competency?
The first one is, I think we may have mentioned this somewhere in another episode, the idea that we as human beings will talk to ourselves in ways that we would never talk to another person unless we were really, really angry. And is that creating a safe space for ourselves? Um, so being aware of those internal dialogues, particularly coming from the inner critic. The the other thing that really jumps up here is talk is cheap. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, I use a coaching session idea first. The coach start a session with, I just want you to know this is a safe space and you can say whatever you need and blah, 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 blah. Nobody effing cares. That's not how you set and hold a safe space. How you hold a safe space and what you're evaluated on in an evaluation is how you hold the non-judgmental space. But do we do that for ourselves? Because we'll tend to start beating ourselves up with this expectation. I should be better, or I'm not good enough, or all that internal dialogue that goes with it that is not creating a safe space for ourselves to grow and give ourselves the permission to take a chance and do something differently, with the risk of doing it wrong or it not working out the way it's supposed to, without then turning back on ourselves like, oh, I did it wrong, or I'm no good because of it.
Yes, and not to age myself, but when I was growing up, when you were growing up, Dan, there wasn't talk about having a safe space in school. There wasn't talk about creating safety or inclusion in the job. I mean, it's great that we've come this far, and those are things that are talked about. And I think in today's culture, we spend a lot of our time making sure, especially if you're working in corporate world or corporate coaching, how am I creating a safe space? That's a very big thing now today in
Mhm.
school and everywhere we go, corporate, school. How am I creating a safe space? Am I creating and cultivating trust with my peers and my colleagues? But just like you said, what's the psychological safety that you're doing for yourself? How often have you turned and said, wow, I'm creating a safe space for my clients and for kids and for people, but there's no safe space for me? Because if you're talking negative to yourself, if you're putting yourself down, and that's just one thing, right? There's many other things that we are probably doing to ourselves that are not honoring a safe space. What about talking to, I look fat. I hate the way my body looks. I hate the way I spoke today. I said 20 times. Look, I'm not saying you can't correct yourself and that constructive criticism isn't okay to talk to yourself about that. But are we creating for ourselves a psychologically safe space? And are we creating trust within ourselves in what we do and what we choose to do?
And I think a lot of that comes back to what is the definition of a safe space? Because over the past probably 5 years, it has been co opted to mean something that it really isn't. A safe space, as a safe space, is where we can throw in all of our ideas with the idea there will be no judgment on it. Dump everything in. We can agree to disagree. We can have a dialogue. We can have a debate. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my opinion. Doesn't mean you're going to change yours, but at least we can gather information. At the end of the day, if we don't agree, we can at least say, I understand where you're coming from. what has evolved, or I should say devolved personally, because it irritates me to no end, is the idea of a safe space where there can be no disagreement. It can only be safe if everybody in the room is our echo chamber, and there's no growth in those. There's no growth in those spaces. It's just constant confirmation bias. So as we're in that space of are we creating, I don't want to say it, when we're in judgment of ourselves and we're saying those negative things, how do we create a space where we can observe it? Like, I'm noticing this is happening, and not putting a judgment on it. I did something and it didn't work out the way I thought it was, so therefore I'm a horrible human being. Versus, that would be judgment, versus discernment. I did something, it didn't work out. What can I learn from it? Which is what we would do for a client, in that trust and safety component coming forward, that it's okay that it didn't work out. I'm not a horrible human being because I'm not stupid because it didn't work out. It's just I didn't have all the information. How can I keep moving forward and not fall back into these old patterns that don't help me live a fuller, happier life?
Yeah, self-trust sets the emotional climate for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and our client. And I don't know if everybody has that issue. Some people may say, I don't talk bad to myself. I'm really kind to myself and I'm not very judgmental to myself. But maybe there's something else that they aren't doing that isn't safe. Or maybe they do have safety, but they don't trust their intuition, or they don't trust the decision they're about to make, or they don't trust what might happen if they do something, right? So again, it's not just creating the safe space, it's also trusting. What does the trusting of yourself look like? Are you going to trust yourself in a kind way or in a way that will support you? As you said, when we go into a coaching session, we aren't an echo chamber. We aren't there to just, we aren't there to judge them, but we aren't there to just agree with them. We're going to challenge them possibly. Like that is our job. I think it was I think it was Marsha Reynolds, I could be wrong, that said, a coach isn't supposed to make you feel better, it's to help you see better. And so, how might that look too for ourselves in trust and safety? I don't necessarily need to make myself feel better, but I need to make sure that I see better in a safe and trusting place and behave in that way.
It again, it comes back to the space of sitting in silence and presence in so many ways, of noticing what's going on and giving ourselves the grace and permission to be there without judgment, to then choose how to move forward. Because what we'll tend to do is, if we're feeling in that low spot, we'll tend to beat ourselves up rather than, I'm here. And as one of my mentors said to me when I was having a really down day a couple years ago, like, it's okay to be there. It's not okay to stay there. Once you've gone through what you needed to go through and experience it, how then do you want to move forward? And it's kind of like, it's almost like honoring the grief cycle in so many ways, instead of trying to short circuit it and jump to be at the end, when there's so much to be experienced to have the full release.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have emotional safety, if it doesn't begin internally, then what shows up in your session, we were kind of doing a little bit of that here in this series, is how might these things that you aren't doing show up in your session. So if you aren't beginning with safety internally, emotional safety internally, how does that maybe show up in your session? Well, maybe that shows up in your session, as you said, if I'm sitting with a client, I shouldn't have to say, "Hey, Dan, I just want to let you know that you are in a safe, trusting space." I shouldn't have to say it. If the emotional safety has internalized into who I am as a being and a person, I should be able to just show up and be in front of you, and you feel that. You know that. I don't need to speak it.
And even as you started to speak it, like, I threw up in my mouth a little bit at the whole idea of someone saying, "You're in a safe space." Like, my God, stop already.
I mean, there's been a few times where I've had to remind a client, because it's through a contract job, this is this is confidential, and nothing that you say here is going to go anywhere. If
Mhm.
because maybe they've forgotten that they can't really speak about something, and I just reiterate, whatever you say here is confidential. It's not going back to the employer.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I fully agree.
Yeah. And
So
that's a little different situation too.
it
That
is, it is,
it's
yeah.
a little bit. Yeah.
But back to cultivating safe and trusty. So for the person that doesn't know how, you just said you've got to sit in silence. You've got to actively listen. Again, all these competencies, just like they interweave in a coaching session, they interweave in our everyday life. So being able to create more trust and safety with yourself begins, I think, as you said, sitting in silence, actively listening to yourself, being open and listening to your intuition and being somatically in your body, telling yourself, hey, I've got to create a safe space for me. Anything else that comes up for you on this one?
What what jumps forward here is the idea that so often in our clients, we will see them as more capable than they see themselves. If we're coming into this work as you have all the tools, all the wisdom, everything, you just forgotten how to access it or you haven't tapped into it yet. And we will hold the space for them to connect to that wisdom and all that strength and resilience in them, which is a sense of trust and safety. Because if I come to a knowing and an embodiment that I am fully capable, there's a trust in that. There's also a level of trust. I'm going to air quote trust here. It's like it's more a familiarity that we then trust because we've experienced it for so long of the imposter, the inner critic stuff, which when it comes to us, then which version are we trusting? The one that tells us we're not good enough? Are we believing it, which is a level of trust because that's what we've experienced to this moment? Or do we tap into that aspirational identity and trust it and go through the growth and the challenges to get there, knowing that we're capable of doing it?
Absolutely. You couldn't have said better. Yeah.
Yeah, trust yourself.
Trust
Trust
yourself.
that deeper wisdom. And again, we're back to that through line. Slow down and reconnect to your intuition and your deeper wisdom.
Yeah, and create the safe space that you're creating for everybody else in your life. You deserve that, right? We deserve that as well. So creating that safe space for ourselves so that then that trust can come in. Maybe that's what's needed is we've got to create the safe space to then allow that trust. There you have it. That is Core Competency 4. We will see you in the next episode and can't
Be
wait.
well.
Bye.
See ya.